Hey, this is Kathy Carter. Welcome to Bible 365. We are in Acts 6, part 2. And today is where we have met Stephen. And so Stephen is going to be essentially accosted by a whole bunch of people that do not agree with the message that he is giving. And we're going to see what they do to him. So stick with me, and I will see you guys in just a minute. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and this channel is here to kind of merge Bible living with Bible literacy. So, we are going to be using the New Testament this year in order to understand what it's like to live as a follower of Christ. I have a link below in the description that I have a download that will bring you to a chronological Bible reading of the New Testament. So, what I want you to do is read every day and join me and hopefully some friends as we talk about what it means to live as a kingdom builder. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back. This is Kathy Carter, Bible 365, and I am in Acts 6, part 2. So in part 1, I was talking about Stephen and the team that kind of got together to help the disenfranchised. So helps to feed the widows. They were kind of unequally feeding some of the widows from different groups. And so there was a team that came together so one team came together to sort of feed and clothe and help the widows while and maybe we call it a hospitality team. I don't know. I feel like I hate calling it that, but maybe that would be some ideas of what a hospitality team would look like. And then, of course, there were the apostles that were the first people with Jesus, and they were the ones going out speaking, preaching, and teaching. And I talked yesterday or last time in the last video about like the importance of having different teams. And I wanted to mention, which I didn't, they did this study when it came to churches. And again, I'm going to go with what I said earlier, that I don't necessarily think church is running right now the way that I think the Church of Acts was supposed to run, or the churches of Jesus Christ are supposed to run. But one of the things that they did say about churches, a study that had been done about churches, was that the more you volunteer actually at a church, the less of a disciple you actually are. So the less you're actually being fed, which is really interesting considering, like, you would think the apostles would be like, oh, we can do everything. We were with Jesus. We have all these wonders and powers and gifts and all these things that we can do. And yet they didn't, right? They chose to do what they were supposed to do, what their job was, that they felt like they were given through the Holy Spirit. And that's not the same job for everybody, right? So we all have our gifts, and different seasons may call for different gifts. And again, the longer I've been in my faith, the more I've realized that, like, some gifts that come to you immediately aren't necessarily the ones that you have a few years later, and you might sort of go back and forth. And so just to be aware of what your gift is at the time and to be working the best in your gift as possible. And kind of talking about what those gifts are, I think will be important in some of the later letters through Paul. But moving on from there, so they had this team that went out and did this whole hospitality thing, and Stephen was one of them. So Stephen was one that loved the Lord, right? Like, he was so passionate for the Lord, and so he was one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons that they picked Stephen. Well, as people started coming in from other areas, there was this church, and this is interesting too. There was this sort of sect or denomination. Now, these were not followers of Christ. This sect or denomination was Jewish people. Don't necessarily, through some of the research that I was doing, we don't necessarily know who they were. So there are a lot of different people that they could be. They could be people who were not of Jewish descent, but chose to believe in the one true God, right? So the Lord, they followed the Lord, but they weren't of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so it could have been them. This was like the Church of the Freedmen. So it could have been those people, and they called themselves that. It could have been those who were slaves underneath Roman rule. And so they were freed from being slaves. And so they were the Church of the Freedmen because they were freed from being slaves. They could have just been people from other nations. And obviously it shows that they were people from other nations that called themselves free men because they were all in these other nations and they weren't in the nation of Israel. So we're not 100% sure who they are. This is really the only time that they're discussed. And so we're not completely familiar with them. What we do know, and we don't even know where their church was. A lot of people say it was definitely in Jerusalem, but we don't even know that for a certainty. This is all speculation. The reason they think there was a church in Jerusalem because they found this little plaque that had like Church of the Freedmen on it, obviously in ancient Hebrew. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were of that. It's definitely a significant possibility, though. So what we do know about them is that they did not like what Stephen was preaching, right? So they didn't like to hear what he was preaching. And they were from, if you look at your map, they were people from like Libya, Egypt, Turkey. So like Israel's like, I'm going to do a terrible map, but Israel's kind of here, and they were all up and around this area, right? So like all of these people, maybe they were native to there, and then they all kind of moved into Jerusalem, encompassed this church. And they weren't buying it. Like maybe they weren't there when Jesus was walking around. Maybe they were, they still just didn't believe, right? They chose not to believe. But for whatever reason, they were like, they didn't buy into what Stephen was saying. And so they tried to prove that what he was saying was false. And so they were going around, and here we go again with like back and forth. This is the same thing that happens all the time. So they couldn't, the spirit was so strong in Stephen that they couldn't actually dispute anything that he was saying. So they couldn't disprove the truth of anything that Stephen was saying. So what did they resort to? They resorted to lying, which, like, we're all going to go, oh, that would never be me. But like, literally look in the mirror, you guys. When someone butts up against anything that you believe is true, anything that you hold valuable, tell me you don't find a rise. I can be brutally honest and tell you when people don't like the same music that I like, I'm like, my initial innocent instinct is like confused. Like, how can you not like? How could you? Okay, I hate country music. Like, literally despise country music. How can you like that? Like, ding 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 ding. How can you like that? But you can't like 90s alternative like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. Okay, so like, it baffles my soul. I do not understand it. I'm at the point in my faith where I'm like, I can let that go, whatever, no big deal. But I'm certain that you've been in places where you get riled up about it, right? My son loves Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. And I'm telling you now, if you tell him Tobey Maguire was the best Spider-Man, he's going to have at you. Like, he literally comes for your neck. Like, he said this, and then he cried this way, and then watch this video, and these guys said this. Like, he will come at you. So we get all right when it comes to the small things, let alone the big things. Who you voted for, right? These things are destroying relationships between people. So the the person that you worship, I mean, that's really going to be a big deal. They say it's the Lord. You say it's this guy that the Lord sent down and that died and that rose again, but I know you never saw him. How is that supposed to compute in people's minds, right? So they're like, I don't like what he's saying. I don't like the way that he's saying it, right? I don't like what he's doing. And so we are going to, at all costs, we are going to get rid of him. We're going to do anything and everything we can to get rid of him. We're going to say he's lying about the law of Moses, which is huge. This is very particular. We're going to say that he's tearing down the temple, right? These are all the same things that they did with Jesus. And they're doing it with Stephen. And so they bring Stephen in, and we're going to see what happens to Stephen once he gets taken down. But what they do say is that when the council saw Stephen, they saw the face of an angel. So we're going to see what that looks like next time in chapter 7. So stick with me, read chapter 7. And if you like this, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in the next video.